If you've ever employed a Generation Y young person, you know, that group born between the early 1980s and the late 1990s, you would know that this is a cohort who have a slightly different view about life, the world around them, and particularly the workforce. I mean, most employers and managers, if they're honest, find Generation Y just the tiniest bit difficult and even frustrating to work with. And yet the reality is you cannot afford to ignore this group. Now, firstly, you can't afford to ignore them from a numeric point of view. They are only just marginally smaller than the baby boomers. They're a huge group. And even though Gen Y may only make up 15% of the workforce right now, you fast forward a few years from today, Gen Y will make up 42% of the working population. And so this is a group who, like it or not, organisations will need to understand and connect with and engage. But beyond the numeric reasons, you can't afford to ignore this group because they bring a lot of positive benefits with them to the workforce. They are adaptable, flexible, they are tech savvy, they're natural networkers. Probably the biggest one, of course, they are a generation who are unafraid to speak truth to power. They are unafraid to question the status quo, to ask why. Why do we do things that way? And that question alone, in this age where everything's changing so quickly, where the focus on business is to completely reinvent and innovate at all times, having a young person on your team who will do that by second nature, that's such a powerful advantage to have. And so in this session, Decoding Tomorrow's Workforce, what I look at is what is actually shaping the attitudes and the values of this group. And I spent 3.5 years interviewing and working with just over 80,000 young people from around the world. And so in that research, what I tried to bring together were some of the common patterns of behaviours and attitudes and paradigms. And in this session, I explore some of those. I look at, for instance, why it is that this is a generation who can sometimes appear to be a little bit unreliable. Far from having a 5-year plan, most Gen Ys don't have a 5-day plan. I also look at the fact that this is a generation who can sometimes be just a little bit high maintenance. Employers will say, why do I have to congratulate my young staff every time they walk into the office in the morning? It's like, well, thank you for being here. And employers are like, I pay them to be here, why do I have to thank them as well? Okay, and there was some research done asking Gen Ys how often they wanted praise and feedback from their boss. 60% said once a day. 35% said 2 to 3 times a day would be even better, if that's okay. Now, what's behind that? And how do you deal with that as a manager in the workforce? You also look at the fact that this is a generation who are technology addicted. You take their mobile phones off them for more than 2 minutes, or you block Facebook or any other social networking site, and they have separation anxiety. Again, where is that from, and how do you negotiate and deal with that within a workplace? So in this session, what I look at are some of the key things that are shaping this generation, but more importantly, as a manager, as a leader, how do you engage this group? How do you get the best from them? Because the reality is, if you are not engaging the next generation workforce, your competitors probably will be.